Now, as you guys may recall, a while back I picked up what was essentially the cheapest Mark V Golf R32 in the country. It hasn't quite featured on the channel much since then, apart from that first mods video we did. And the reason for that is I've simply just been using the car and enjoying it. 9,000 plus miles to be exact. So yeah, this rusty Golf that I paid £2,500 for has actually been the perfect daily over the past 10 months. Well, okay, the radiator did give out over the summer, but check this, it was actually the original one from 2005, which is when this car was built. And I don't know about you, but 19 years is a pretty good shift for a radiator, so we'll let it off for that one. Now, my plan going forward is to just continue using it over winter, but because we have done a fair few miles since this last check over, I figured it's time we give the car a bit of TLC. And to assist us with that goal, I'm pleased to announce that just like part 1, the legends at eBay UK have kindly sponsored this video. Now, if you're a DIYer like me, you already know that eBay is the default place to go when you're in need of some parts. There's literally millions of items to choose from, new and used, all from trusted sellers. And better yet, with eBay Assured Fit, you just need to enter your car's registration and it'll bring up everything that matches your exact make and model. And worst case, it doesn't fit, you've got 30 days to return it, hassle free. Naturally, of course, I put together my own shopping basket based off the R32's registration, and throughout this video we're going to work our way through it. All the respective eBay links for each item will be down below in the description, so if you do fancy replicating today's innings, go ahead and check it out, and yeah, just get your car running right. It is pretty cool to see the R32 and the R36 in the same shot again. It has been a while because that's been spending its time on the roads, unlike that thing. The idea is when that comes off the lift, that will go onto there. We're keeping things relatively straightforward for now. That's the reason why everything you see here is mostly a service item. We'll start over here. So this is some Quantum 5W40 oil, obviously new genuine filter, new drain plug. We've also got a new cabin filter, so I never did this, and I believe a lot of people tend to just ignore that, but it'd make a nice change for the freshness in there. Then we've got an air filter. Now this is OEM, and over here we've got a bunch of gaskets. So this is the one for the rocker cover. We've got the spark plug tubes. We've also got an oil cap gasket, and we've got the lower intake manifold gasket because that's going to have to come off when we do this job. And we've got some new OEM spark plugs. And the reason for me wanting to change the rocker cover gasket is because of this slight leak here. I'm in two minds whether or not it's just the oil cap when people have been filling it, or if there's a genuine leak there. Either way, it's good to do the gasket. It's one of the common things. We've done it on both of the 3.6s. So I thought, why not do it on this? Unfortunately, it is a bit trickier though, because the intake manifold is one piece unlike the 3.6. So we are going to have to move the front panel forward slightly. Now the reason for this is mainly due to the limited access you have to the lower intake manifold bolts when the front panel is in its default position. But because this is a Mark V, it'll take me 2 minutes to undo the lot. So in the interest of getting some better viewing angles for you folks, let's commence a disassembly montage. Loose. That's freed. Straight into the drip tray. Yeah, this is what I mean about the washer fluid. Thankfully it's going into a drain pan and not on the floor for a change. I didn't really have much in there and it was kind of the wrong one anyway, so I'm not too fussed about losing some. I'll just hop on eBay tonight and get some more. No big deal. There we go. Got bonnet cable around here, which is going to be tricky to show you. It's essentially clipped on. Sensors off, propped up a bit. With everything out of the way, we've now got a clear shot to those lower 6mm Allen bolts. It is recommended to use a ball-headed Allen socket, but I managed to get away with the normal style. And a little trick here is to refer to that lovely brand new manifold gasket that you got off eBay, as the holes should correspond exactly to the location of each bolt that you need to remove. I'm gonna unplug it. At that point, there's another clip there. There's another clip on this side. Looks like there's a T30 with this bracket. Very strange setup. You can see here the ground is on two 10mm, but the outer one was quite stuck. So I recommend you put a spanner on the inner bit once you've loosened it slightly if it's stuck like mine, and it should help. But this hose as well, which is surprisingly intact. Because I'm freestyling this process a bit, there is a lot of moving around the engine bay, and next on the agenda was this vacuum pipe that's below the intake manifold. Don't undo the two screws like I did initially for the upper piece, as it's not needed. The pipe should simply slide off, and just use a bit of silicone spray if it is stuck like mine. There's also a further two bolts. One holds a dipstick tube in place and the other holds a bracket with all of that vacuum stuff. And yeah, that's pretty much it for down here, so let's move back up and onto the throttle body. Will that come off now? Indeed it will. We've got 2 screws, one of those is here, another one is there. We've got a bracket for the fuel line, so this needs to come off. Also have a bunch of pipes going into the intake manifold. One, so push the tab and press this way. There we go, that's 2. There's also another Allen head screw at the back of the manifold, but this one's a bit of a pain to get a socket on, as VW conveniently put a very rigid bracket in front of it that curves upwards. My best advice is to undo the 13mm nut holding it on, pry it off its stud without trying to break anything, and then slot on an Allen bit into that gap. I then just use a spanner on the end of it to loosen it, and it did the trick. Culprit. And that, my friends, brings us on to the last thing, the coil packs. It looks like they won't get in the way, but believe me, they will. And they will get damaged if you try not to remove them. It is a bit fiddly with a pry tool in that small little rectangular gap. So I managed to get away with removing 2, 4 and 6 and then doing the others after. What's left? Intake manifold off, and now we can actually get a better look at the rocker cover itself. In terms of this leak, it does seem to be mainly around this corner. I can't really see any dripping around the other edges, so maybe this was from topping up, who knows. Come on, lovely. Right then, so rocker cover removed, a very familiar sight for me, seeing the top of a VR6 engine, albeit slightly different here as opposed to that one over there. The R32 engine, the gasket curves upwards, it doesn't remain flat, and obviously there's differences on this side because we haven't got a high pressure fuel pump because this isn't a FSI engine. That probably also explains why there isn't much carbon buildup. It isn't really an issue on these cars. But in terms of the cams themselves, they don't seem to be overly scored. There's a bit of wear on them, but the car ran fine, didn't make any funny noises. That's of course the chain right there because it's chain driven like the other engines, and as you can see here, there's very little slack in it. I don't think it's been changed in the past. I'm probably going to just carry on running the original chain until it sounds horrible on cold start or gets rattly. Looking in here, I can't see any foreign debris or sludgy oil. So I think it's been off before, but those make me think that they might not have done the spark plug tube because that looked quite perished to me. As mentioned earlier in the video when I showed you all the bits, I did order replacement ones off eBay. So make sure when you're ordering the whole gasket, you get these as well because you don't want to have oil leaking into the spark plug tubes. Thankfully, with all the coil packs, they all look dry and there's no puddles of oil. Now, in terms of the rocker cover itself, the gasket still has flexibility in it, so this is why I think it will have been done. It has got an OE part number that is a genuine item. This here is a PCV system. We're gonna undo this as well because I have bought a diaphragm. If you're a regular viewer of the channel, you know that we've replaced one of these before on the R36. Right, so enjoy this cleaning montage. For reference, the only product I'll be using here is the brake cleaner, which I picked up off eBay in the last R36 engine bay video. I've still got a bunch left over, and ultimately it does the trick. And there's the finished product. It's not perfect, but I don't think perfection is actually possible with all the weathering that's occurred. These covers are metal, unlike the plastic ones on the R36. Now moving on to the PCV, splitting it does require some form of a pry tool. It will be quite stuck together, so be prepared for a bit of a battle. But I found the easiest method to be a straight pick in the corner, as you haven't got a hinge to worry about, so it'll just come straight off, if that makes sense. They're both flexible, but you can see this one's starting to go a bit more fragile. They'll probably end up tearing at some point. It's a lot thinner, whereas this one seems a bit stronger material. Clip that in from the old diaphragm, put the spring on, place that in there. In theory, just sit like that. Slide the cover back on. Then simply just put it back in place. finally time to install our new gasket. So just lay it on. Fantastic. And then we've got our tubes that go around where the spark plug holes are. Now there is a little dash at the top and it corresponds to the lines on the cover, so I suspect that's the way they orientate. I mean, here's one of the old ones. It's all torn inside and it's not like you're removing the coil packs every other day. We also can't forget the replacement oil cap gasket. I bought this simply just to cover all bases in regards to that leak in the corner of the rocker cover. It did look slightly different to the original one that came off, but the part numbers and diameters matched up, so ultimately it just went on without issue. Right, so now that that's done, we can proceed with reinstalling it back onto the engine, but you want to make sure the mating surface is free of any debris or dirt, and because I think it was done in the past, it is relatively good. It looks like part of the wiring harness has just fell off there, so that's one bit of debris we can get out the way. But I think I've figured out why there was a leak on this side. If you look here, this is where the main part of the engine splits from this chain area, and according to the instructions I've seen, you're meant to put a bit of silicone there and there, and there's definitely no sign of it being applied in the past, so that's probably correlating to why there's a leak in that exact same spot. It is the only thing I could think of, because that gasket was in perfectly usable condition. Because we're actually applying sealant, unlike the last guy, I opted for some Derco HT off eBay. This seems to be the go-to amongst the VW boys, and I've used it on other engines, so I imagine it'll do just fine here. But let me know in the comments if you do have a preferred alternative. So I applied it in the 2 recommended spots, but I also added a dab in the other 2 corners around the studs, just for good measure, of course. This stuff does start to harden relatively quick, so make sure you get the cover back on in a reasonable time, and then it's just simply a case of tightening up the screws. But just remember to go easy and in a crisscross pattern, so you're applying equal pressure, and then of course torque to 10 Newton meters. Now we're going to finally change our spark plugs, which I haven't done in the past year of ownership. There was a lot of dirt stuck in there, and at the time I was like, okay, I'll leave it till I do the gasket, which is today, of course. I just want to make sure no debris falls in the engine. See what just came out of there? Do that for the rest of them. Quite tight, that. Come on. Bit crusty around the edges. Tips okay. We'll get all of them out and have a look. Right, so our spark plugs are out and they're here on the table. The first bit of good news is that they're all genuine VW NGKs. So at least there's no weird mismatching going on and trying to solve a misfire of one cylinder. But of course they are quite worn, so I don't know when they were changed. And it does seem to be quite an odd pattern of wear. If you look at the metal section in the middle, just before the thread, the odd ones are a lot more oxidized and the even ones look fairly silver. Now obviously because it's a VR6, the spark plugs are in a funny layout. It's obviously a single cylinder head, so maybe that just accounts for the way those spark plug tubes were sitting, or just the dirt gets in on that angle. But yeah, of course, this is what I'm going to be replacing it with. The genuine items yet again should do the trick. We'll get those in now, of course. Thread them in first. All done. Next up, we have our intake manifold gasket. Pulling it works pretty straightforward, just match whatever you see. Right then, so our airbox, of course normally you do this sort of thing when it's in place, but because it's already off, why not just get it over done with whilst it's on the desk. That looks very similar to the OEM one that I bought off eBay. So a little side-by-side comparison. It's definitely a bit weathered, but it's not by any means original, I don't think. It'd be a lot worse for wear. One piece intake manifold going on. I would say it's been a pleasure, but it hasn't. There's the fuel rail there as well, which is a bit tricky. And you got this pipe up here, and it's definitely a fun time, folks, I tell you that. Now from here, it's basically a reverse of everything. So in the interest of time, we'll get that all done and we'll move over to the oil change. But yeah, before we do that, I just got one request. If you are enjoying the video so far, or you found it useful, make sure you go down and click subscribe. Open that, and some pressure get through. Okay folks, so you join me underneath a Mark V in a very dignified position. There's a fair amount of oil around the sump, which doesn't look good. There's our drain plug, which still looks relatively fresh. There we go. Now whilst that continues to drip, we're going to get the oil filter out. It's located over here. Is a 36mm socket. In theory, it should be in pretty good condition. It's an OEM one. It's done 9,000 miles. Wow. We'll have a bit of mess. Nothing to worry about there. I could go and get a magnet and check for metal filings, but I highly doubt it. And if there is some, well, I'm happy with the performance the engine's put in for now. It's done 190,000 on miles, so all good. New filter from eBay. As you can see, looks very similar. Has a zigzag pattern, that's how you know it's the R32 one. Old O-ring off. A new O-ring, put this on. Now there's no bits that I had to take off the old one. So yeah, that kind of clips in. There's a bit of play, but that's exactly how the old one came off. Give it a complete shower and brake cleaner. Outside not so much, but inside looks great. Make sure to put a bit of oil on the O-ring because you don't want that to be dry. A new drain plug can also go back in. Make sure you thread it straight, of course. Torqued. Pretty much all I want to do now is blast it all with brake cleaner and clean every last bit of oil residue, but realistically it's better when it's going to be on the 2-post lift as I'll have a bit more access to everything. But let's just spray a bit of it off now that we're here. I believe it takes around 5.5 litres, which is good because the oil is supplied in 5 litres and 1 litre cans. You can use 530 and 540. There's a difference in opinions, but I've had good luck with this, so I'll just continue. So last on the service list was the replacement cabin filter. To access it, you just need to head over to the passenger side footwell, undo these 2 hand tight screws which you don't need a tool for, and then pull down the piece of material. Now it's behind this cover right here. That is a lot of dirt. See, this is quite overlooked because if you imagine you're breathing in whatever is gonna come out of this. I don't think it's been changed in a while. Wow. VWAG 2017. Okay, so it's been changed, but a long time ago. Ugh, even smells. Look at the state of that. It's such an inexpensive thing, but the bottom line is it's one of the sort of defenses between you and the car and the outside elements, wherever you're going. Get that in position. Now there are these little holes and they correspond to the hooks on this. See, they go through there. And that's going to slide. And then to the side. Cabin filter done. With the service items all wrapped up, I thought it'd be nice to get some form of a rain repellent on the windscreen, especially with all the usage this car gets. So I headed over to eBay's dedicated winter essentials page and decided on some Rain-X. There's literally thousands of items to choose from on here, ranging from de-icers to windscreen covers. It's specifically tailored to all that lovely weather we'll now be encountering. And what makes things just a bit better is that eBay is offering 20% off everything until the 28th of February 2025. A direct link to this page along with the Rain-X will be down below in the description, so make sure you head over there and get yourself prepped. Now I've never actually tried any off-the-shelf rain repellent type product like this, so quite interested to see how it goes. Of course the paint and the glass on this car is far away from being protected already, so it will definitely come in handy. In fact, I can actually hear the rain out there. I have gone ahead and wiped down the windscreen so it hasn't got any dirt on there, but it is quite aged, let's say. There's a few repair marks. I think it is the original one, just like everything else on the car. The instructions on the back here say to just apply it in a circular motion with a microfiber cloth, so we'll go ahead and do that now. Let me know if you have used Rain-X before. Be good to get your thoughts. Tricky to apply it when your car's up in the air, of course. Got completely dry microfiber now to just clean off any excess. All done. Right then, so that's the R32 all wrapped up and ready for some daily use in the winter. That was pretty much the goal for today. It wasn't to make the car perfect. I know there's a fair few rough edges on it, but ideally I want to wait till it's on a 2-post lift for a lot of that work because yeah, it's not fun rolling around on the floor. I also want to give a massive thanks again to eBay for sponsoring today's video. It's an honor to have an organization like them supporting the builds on the channel. All of the various items that I've shown you will be linked in the description down below. And remember, with eBay, you can find the right part at the right price and shop winter essentials on eBay and get 20% off until 28th of February 2025. Right, I'll see you in the next video.